Ladies and gentlemen, I am Mike E. Dangerously, and you're watching Shot of Nostalgia. Let's get extreme!
Welcome to the 5th episode of Shot of Nostalgia, where we continue our deep dive back into the history of wrestling and fully immerse ourselves in a timeline. We are continuing to journey all the way back to 1996 WCW to relive one of the most memorable years in all of wrestling history. As always, I'm the ace of the tavern, Stephen Acefield, joined by Vegas's own Mike Bellcaster. What's up?
Nothing much, man. Just hanging out. Yeah, man. Exciting week coming up. Exciting things on the horizon. It's gonna be a good time, and I'll be hanging out in Vegas. So, make sure you guys come pop up, say hi. I'll have stickers on me. I'm gonna be passing out. Vegas is gonna be papered in Turnbuckle Tavern,
wall to wall. Turnbuckle Tavern. You guys find Mike Bellcaster and seek him out. He'll be there. He's the most personal guy that I know. And
hell yeah.
Listen, he's a time traveling guy, but he'll be in the present day, Double or Nothing Vegas. And maybe 20 years from now, someone will be talking about that era as 2022 as the best. We'll do a shot in nostalgia 20 years from now. We're talking about Double or Nothing 2022.
Yeah, man. I'll meet you there.
Yeah. But for now, we will continue our journey through 1996. And today we're going to be reviewing the February 19th episode of Nitro and the February 26th episode of Nitro. So we're cruising right through.
Yeah.
Each week we'll continue to review 2 episodes, whether it be a pay-per-view or, a Clash of Champions. So we're only doing 2 episodes. We want to keep it nice and you can focus on what we're talking about. If you have not watched the episodes in the past, this is episode 5, as you heard in the intro. Go back and check it out. We are doing a full watch through of 1996, and we do know the highlights of what does happen. And you might know it as well, but you really have to watch with us to dive deep because it's so much fun.
Yeah, 100%. I'm telling you, this is the most fun I'm having, especially going back and watching old stuff. It's not like the Attitude Era yet. It's pre all the craziness going on. This is like some pure, great wrestling, awesome stacked events. And the short, it's like 45 minutes to 50-something minutes an episode. I knocked through them in a quick afternoon right before dinner time, just throwing them on, enjoying them, and really, really good stuff. Really good stuff.
And they're just stacking the cards week after week. We're getting main event guys that are just in opening matches, and week after week, we're just getting a star-studded cast. And even at the time, it was something that was unheard of because on TV, you didn't give away these matches, and WCW kind of shook the mold up and made television ratings the most important thing going for them, which is a change of pace because you used to save these big matches for a pay-per-view buy.
Yeah, 100%. And it makes the pay-per-views even more spicier. There's a lot of chaos going on. I love it. Good time to be watching wrestling for anybody. If you lived through it and you don't remember it, or if you're new to the game, go back and check it out because it's so fascinating, man.
Yeah, so if you still have not, again, checked out those episodes that were still so close to the beginning, just watch them, then watch us, and you'll be all caught up because the thing that you're missing is we also talk about the newsletter and we talk about everything going on in the wrestling world at that time, which does bring me to happy hour. You ready to get going?
Oh, I'm ready.
So during this segment, we will be talking about all the news in the wrestling world, specifically Dave Meltzer's newsletter. And whether you love him or hate him or you're just indifferent to him, he was giving real-time history and writing about wrestling in a way that most people were not doing at the time. So he is our play-by-play of what's going on historically. And a lot of what he had said and predicted has come true. I mean, he is wrong on some things. He is human. But what's really great about going back on this is he's coming out with 2 newsletters a month at this point, or sometimes 3, and still going strong today. It just provides good insight into what's going on. Because you could read the books, and you can talk about Death of WCW by Brian Alvarez, and you could watch shoot interviews to have everything compiled into one spot. It's just a masterful level of information, really.
100%. That's the cool thing is you could go as deep as you really want to with this, or you could just sit back and enjoy it. Even just 83 weeks, Eric Bischoff's podcast. I mean, you could watch along some of these shows with it and just get his insight at the time from what he remembers, regardless if he's bullshitting or not. So it's good to I like the depth we have here. It's we're swimming in the deep water of WCW daddy.
that we are. And speaking of Dusty Rhodes, he was historic for being, bloody as hell in every big match. So there wasn't a newsletter, and we would see this change in a big way throughout the late 90s. But this is from Dave Meltzer. Right now, of the major promotions in the world, both All Japan and WWF have an outright ban on the blade. WCW had banned it for a long time and brought it back, and the blood appears to in some ways contribute to a greater interest level in the product. So I asked you, Mike Belcaster, you watch both wrestling without blood, with blood. Which do you prefer? Do you think it adds a lot to matches? And do you think WCW can credit some of their success in the late 90s to having, I guess, blood contributed to the matches?
That's a good, deep question there. You know what? When it's done right and it's not overdone, I think it adds so much more to the story. It's the sugar in your coffee. It's what makes it great. Ric Flair, obviously, we know he bleeds a lot, and those cage matches, like he does it tastefully for the most part in the earlier days, but as time goes on, everybody starts bleeding all over the place when they stub their toe, and so I feel like we're still in the zone of it being tastefully done, especially coming off of the blood ban, if you will. So I think it adds plenty to the story, man.
Yeah, at the risk of going on too much of a tangent, people give the late 90s WWF a bad name for having all the blood. But if you really look at it, the Ruthless Aggression era had more blood than ever. I just remember the 2004 Shawn Michaels blade jobs that he would break out, WrestleMania 20, where he's literally dripping blood. The Survivor Series 2003 match where he tries to survive and eventually loses due to Evolution getting involved, and he's so bloody. Even Vince McMahon at WrestleMania 19, 2003, so much blood. So to me, and I agree with you, when it's done tastefully and it's done in an appropriate way, it's not just done for the sake of doing it, where we see nowadays Cody Rhodes was doing it for the sake of doing it. It doesn't have the same feel. But when it's done in the right way, it really adds a lot to the product. And for me, watching it, it really resonates. And I remember as a kid, I had some of these old school WCW figures and the WWF figures, and I used to take red marker and put them on their forehead during the match. So as a kid, it resonated with me like, this is a serious match. There's something serious going on for the world title. Blood had to be involved.
Yeah, no, and like you bust out those Crayola washable markers, man. You push a little hard on the figure's head. It looks like he just did a gush job. It looks great. You blow on it a little bit, it splatters on their chest. It really adds that flavor. So yeah, it really made those big feud payoffs something special, because it was they had to get it out there. It had to be vicious, had to be violent. It really sells the product better.
And do you think that this had, obviously ECW hasn't reached its peak yet, but do you think it had something to do with ECW's success, that the big boys wanted to get involved with what they were doing?
Yeah, absolutely. How can it not?
Right.
ECW at the time was overdoing it, but I feel like they had the right mindsets of people in there to make it more tasteful, more flavorful, make things happen, and not water it down.
Yeah. So moving on in the newsletter, we had, and this doesn't have anything to do with WCW, only for the latter part of what he says, but Titan Sports, aka WWF, I'm going to call him Titan in here because that's what they're referenced, once again unleashed the Ultimate Warrior's return with a promo piece on the February 19th Monday Night Raw. So we're getting a return of Ultimate Warrior. We eventually see him at WrestleMania 12 where he squashes Triple H and blah, blah, blah. The biggest thing here was this was a direct response to all the stuff that Vince was throwing barbs at about steroid use and all this. Obviously, we know that Ultimate Warrior is a guy who's benefited from using steroids and has admitted using them in the past, interviews and whatnot. And maybe he was clean then, maybe not, but probably not. But this is essentially what WCW and what Meltzer had to say about it. The return, and it should be mentioned that it was never directly said that he was returning, also be ironic and hypocritical coming off the heels of Titan pointing the finger on television at WCW on the subject of steroids and threatening to expose them more on future in that subject. So very interesting. Obviously, Vince throwing barbs, and people see right through it. If you want to look at it through a lens of transparency, you know that you can see right through what Vince is saying. We know that he's full of shit, but it's an interesting move here. Like desperate for star power, he goes back into the well one more time, goes for Jim Hellwig, Ultimate Warrior. Like for you, do you think that like this was a direct response of losing stars from WCW and they were trying to get back like some of their glory days, or was it just right place, right time for Warrior?
I don't think many things happen at the right place, right time for whoever when it comes to WWF Titan, if you will. But I think it was a little bit of trying to take a jab at Hogan, Macho Man. They were running the ship over WCW, so I think this was his last ploy to kind of bring that generation back. And I mean, obviously it didn't turn out well, so we see how
Right.
well things are. But yeah, I think it was more of a, oh well, you guys got Hogan, you guys got Macho Man. Let me bust out the Ultimate Warrior. I don't put asses in the seats, pal.
Yeah, so Meltzer kind of echoes what you were saying as well. Aside from the hypocrisy of it, he said taking Hellwig on at this point with his track record, regardless of steroids, appears to be yet another sign of desperation. And that's really what it is here. I think Vince is throwing punches. We're seeing WCW have the upper hand in a lot of ways, and it's only going to get worse for Vince because we haven't even hit the stride yet of what WCW was able to accomplish in that run that they had through you referenced 83 weeks at Bischoff's podcast, which is aptly named 83 weeks for those weeks that they annihilated Raw in the ratings.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting to see how different both brands are moving. And I know that WCW is really relying on the older star, but not really too. Like as we watch these shows, there's a lot of young talent that is littered throughout this, which bridges the gap. And I think that's an important thing that we need to talk about as well even with AEW today. You need to bridge the gap from new fans to current fans and also fans from a long time ago. Wrestling is a buffet. And I think in order to have a quality show, sometimes it's not everything on the show is not going to be for you. Like, we were in the chat yesterday or 2 days ago on the AEW wrap-up show, and someone was complaining about Sting being involved. And listen, it may not be for you, but he's not taking anyone's spot in the card that spot is going to be utilized. It's carved out specifically for Sting. It's not like someone else could be in that spot. It's a legend spot.
Yeah.
So the mindset for me has to be, of course, nuance. We don't want older guys like WCW eventually had going on where it was just like a complete shit show.
Yeah.
But right now, WCW has a nice balance, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I think we're seeing it more and more as the weeks go on. I mean, especially this week, we got some Alex Wright matches. It's just not just Alex Wright's the only person out there, but I mean, it's cool to see some up and coming talent along with the stars that we're accustomed to seeing. The big guys like a Hogan and a Macho Man. I mean, even Diamond Dallas Page at this point is still technically a young guy. I mean, he didn't hit his stride for another year or so after this. Yeah. So I mean, we're getting a very nice fine balance of things. Especially once we phase out this Taskmaster era going on right now.
Yeah, you feel like it's like a shedding of the skin, really. It seriously is that. You feel like WCW is really coming into their own as each week progresses off the calendar. And you see the show really shifting into what they would become. Because when we started this journey on January 1st, 1996, even a few short weeks, we're at episode 5 here. We're 10 weeks into the Nitros. A pay-per-view, a Clash of Champions, it already feels so different and in a good way.
Yeah, no, I couldn't echo that statement anymore. I think it's like I said before, just describing what we're doing here. I think this has been a very refreshing throwback thing to do, and it's been not only fun to watch, but kind of uplifting. You're seeing wrestling from a different perspective now that we're older. We're not little kids. We're not just buying into Hogan, or Sting or whatever. And we're kind of like, we're seeing some of the greats that made us kind of fall in love with it, like the Road Warriors and Harlem Heat, and very refreshing, man.
Absolutely. And we see Impact and TNA follow the wrong model of WCW, sort of not studying the history. They were like, oh, we just get a whole bunch of old guys that have names from different companies, mostly WWE. We can survive on that. And I think most companies have realized that what WCW did, they built it upon Hogan and the whole Disney press conference, and that got WCW up to a certain spot. But what really helped get WCW and keep it there was the underneath storytelling and the work rate of a guy like Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit, and eventually guys like Canyon, La Parka, all those guys. People want to talk about WCW being just a retirement home for wrestling, and it wasn't that. Like, if you say that to me, I know you didn't watch. I know you didn't. Yeah. You've never taken the time to watch.
No, 100%. And people, that's a lot of things. People were much like they are nowadays, very, very one-sided towards the brand. It was rather you watch WWF or you watch WCW. There was very few in between openly. I know that, secretly there was a lot of channel surfers out there, going back and forth, seeing what was going on. But if you pay attention and you actually watch what's going on, there was a big difference between both companies, especially at this point. Like, WWF was trying to build out of the new gen almost era. They were still kind of in it, but it's like a very big transitional era for them. But same thing with WCW. I mean, we're on the cups of the biggest tidal wave in pro wrestling as we're watching this, and it's cool to kind of see what led to it, how it's building, and ultimately its transformation into that. So I'm looking forward to the future of Shot of Nostalgia here, because we both know what's coming, and it just gets better and better as the weeks go on, and that's saying a lot, because these are not bad episodes of Nitro at all.
Yeah, you touched upon what you said before, and the word is tribalism, and people want to talk about how toxic the wrestling community is now. It's always been that way. If this was 1996 and you had Twitter at your fingertips, we would still have the same conversations where people were going to be the stand for WWE people, and you can have the people that are apologists for AEW, and there's really no in between aside from the knowledgeable fans that want to have consistent, good wrestling conversation like we have here on the Tavern, where you have different opinions and people can have a conversation.
Yeah.
But on social media, a lot of times, social media didn't exist then, but at the time, those fans did exist. People were they're loyal to the brand, and that's always been the case.
Yeah, and that's another great point to that is everything's so instant now. You can just pick up your phone, hit your thumb on the screen, and you're on Twitter, you're on Facebook, you're on Instagram. You're at your outlet's disposal, as opposed to back in 97, 98 when AOL, all these things started blowing up, or it took like 10 minutes to sign on to the internet. So by the time you got on, your frustrations were already eased out, and you're like, what the hell was I doing on here? Whatever. I'm going to check my email now,
right.
And as opposed to instant, you see something, and the moment it happens, you're able to go onto it and shit on it publicly. Whether people agree or disagree with you, that's neither here or there. It's just that you have that instantaneous voice now, which you did not have back then.
For better or for worse, and mostly for the worse, I would say, for a lot of topics.
Yeah, absolutely.
We could continue that conversation all day, but let's move ahead into the newsletter. And we had another Brian Pillman anecdote showing up, and he showed on the February 17th ECW Arena show. In part of his quest to convince people he's completely lost his mind, Pillman was in character from time to time, and he showed up in Philly, showing up at the building wearing a La Parka mask to hide he was there, pretending to only speak Japanese to everyone backstage. He did an angle in the ring where he turned the lights off, and when they came on, Pillman was in the ring and received an enormous babyface pop, which continued when he called current WCW head Eric Jerkoff. Pillman then called the audience smart marks in a derogatory term and did an obscenity-laced interview that got most, if not all, the audience to turn against him. So continuing down the path, we thought we saw the end of Pillman. Spoiler alert, we haven't. He shows up in bits and pieces through Nitro. I got some bad info. Whether it was a work or not, he's showing up on different Nitros, and we'll talk about that as it comes up. We know that he was very publicly fired by WCW, although there's claims he's still on the payroll, as there are indications the company is going to great, even laughable lengths to try to get everyone to believe it's a shoot. The big danger in this is the wrestlers by nature never trust management to tell them the truth, usually for good reason, but often it becomes a case of an extended and out of control paranoia. So Meltzer sort of taps on something. You're trying to work the audience, but in turn, you have to work the boys. That sort of creates a toxic energy in the locker room. And we did have a little discrepancy last week when J-Bone brought it to our attention that he believes Mark Morrow was the first person to get the first ever guarantee contract. We did a little research. It looks like his was a downside guarantee and Pillman was the first fully guaranteed. Whatever the case is, Pillman did change the way wrestling is formatted, more so than I believe Mark Marrow ever formatted wrestling, just because he took matters in his own hands. He went through the different channels and Eric Bischoff helped kind of give him a launch point, but this wouldn't be possible if Pillman didn't kind of sell himself, showing up at ECW Arena with a La Parka mask and acting like he's deranged. So it's a little bit different to me, and I don't know if you want to speak to that as well about the argument with J-Bone.
I mean, a disagreement, false news. I mean, I don't know how to explain it. It threw me off about Miro because not only contract-wise, but just talent-wise. I mean, who the hell is Mark Miro to get a first downside guarantee contract? Like, it made no sense. So it just lost all credibility at that point. But I think it's insane. But I think Pillman obviously made his own tunnel towards it, and I think he did a lot of legwork as opposed to being Mark Marrow going from Johnny B. Bad to ultimately being a manager for Sable at this point in the future. Like, it's just weird, man. And I think the better man won, if you will.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, the fact that they even gave him guaranteed money was insane. Like, and I think if you listen to 83 Weeks when they're talking about, I think it's the Uncensored one or about whatever episode I was listening to, he did speak to having to replace Marrow's spot in the storyline, or Johnny B. Bad, I should say. And he was saying they replaced him with Booty Man, who eventually we'll get into about him and all that with the whole Brutus Beef gimmick and all that. But he was saying, oh, Eric, they want to make me a star. And he's like, no shit. What do you think we're trying to do with you? Like, you think we're not trying to make you a star? You just can't get over. Yeah. So to me, it's a little weird, but not to spend too much time on Mark Marrow. But as far as Pillman goes, he's only confirmed for 2 more ECW dates on the weekend of March 7th and March 8th, probably to work against Shane Douglas. And then the Pillman story was the subject of more wrestling conversation in the past week than any wrestling angle in recent memory. There was more reaction on both the hotline and the internet than to Shawn Michaels' angle or the Lex Luger and Medusa jumps, largely because of people not being sure whether it was a shoot or a work. I'm just not sure how that translates into making money in wrestling other than Monday through Wednesday of late night, last week hotlines. So this is sort of apropos to what's going on today. We talked about the Cody stuff, even the Sasha and Naomi stuff going on. This is sort of commonplace in the wrestling world in 2022. At the time, this was very, very new, uncharted waters. Yeah.
No, it really was. Like, and even like getting the tidbits from the hotline itself, trying to figure all this stuff out. You had to pay into it. The hotline was not a cheap thing. It was $1.99 a minute. It was crazy. And then you also had to you had to pay into the Observer. It wasn't a free subscription based thing that you could just get a letter sent to your house every week, or twice a month.
Yeah, they would send the digital. Well, there was no digital copy in 1996. It was, I think 2000 they transitioned to over when they started doing the podcasting, which is revolutionary in itself because they were the only one doing Wrestling Observer Radio at the time. Like, no one was speaking about wrestling on the radio at all. Like, that didn't exist, which is beside the point. But yeah, I mean, to get your news, you had to pay for it. And like, if you want to get real news today too, you kind of have to pay for it as well. I mean, us as wrestling fans have to sift through the bullshit. And luckily you guys have us on Turnbuckle Tavern to sift through the bullshit and find the stuff that's worthy of talking about. But it's an oversaturation of information right now because, like you mentioned, you have almost has too much access that anyone could type in Roman Reigns. And then anything comes up that anyone could have put out there with no justification of how they made that claim. And someone somewhere would buy it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we seen, I think it was last week or this week, the Fightful posted something about Hangman Adam Page ate an old Reese's bar. It was like, that's the stupidest shit in the world that anybody could post on a website. It's like Hangman woke up today at 9:03 p.m. or a.m. It's like, why even report on it if it's that silly? It's got no place to be out there.
Yeah, agreed. As far as it does for the ratings, I think as we see, the reality-based programming does eventually have legs, and we'll see it continue because obviously by bridging the gap of what's reality and what's fantasy or kayfabe or whatever, however you want to put it, ratings do improve. So preliminary indications that our WCW Super Bowl show on February 11th did about a 0.63 buy rate. WCW officials are pegging the figure at 0.70, which is conceivably accurate. The number would be slightly higher than Halloween Havoc and be a huge increase over both World War III and Starrcade. The 0.63 figure would figure out to be approximately 148,000 buys and a $1.86 million company gross. So we see improvement from week to week. The buy rate shit doesn't mean anything to me. I look at the overall buys. That would seem like a small number today, really, especially if you compare it to like WrestleMania, but pay-per-view is a little more expensive then.
Yeah, absolutely. Not everybody had a cable box. You know, a lot of people were sharing. Like you had to go to your neighbor's house to watch something that was a pay-per-view, boxing, wrestling, you name it. It wasn't an every household thing yet. It was just getting on the cups of that. It was just growing into that. And it was crazy times, man. Wild, Wild West is what I like to call it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably admit to it. I admit to it as well. I used to have one of those burner boxes where we used to watch pay-per-views, and sometimes they'd work, sometimes they wouldn't. And you'd have friends over for a pay-per-view. I still remember distinctly in my brain. I don't even know how old. Judgment Day 2000, when Taker came back as the Biker Taker, the Iron Man match between Triple H and The Rock. And we couldn't watch the show. We had to watch it through scrambled lens because it just died mid-show.
Yeah.
And that was the world we lived in. It wasn't like, oh, I'll just check it out. Like maybe someone has an illegal stream somewhere online. Like that wasn't possible. It was either you watched it on your box or you had it on pay-per-view legit.
Yeah. With the tragic night Owen Hart died, I remember watching it with the cable that goes in the back of the cable box hooked up into my TV because you could turn on the station and you'd hear it, but you wouldn't be able to watch it. So I was like, oh, like I heard about the incident. I was like, no way. So I screwed the thing in, listened to the replay as I was going to bed as a kid. And I was just like, wow, like that's what you had to do if you weren't able to watch it. Crazy times, man.
Absolutely. And that is something that is truly a shot of nostalgia. Absolutely. So we talked about how WCW was going away from the house shows. Now in the newsletter, it's saying how they're moving back into it after doing $216,000 on the 3 weekend dates, all headlined by Ric Flair defending against Randy Savage. The February 17th show at the Baltimore Arena drew 11,000 fans, 8,000 paid with a $102,000 gate. It was the first legit $100,000 gate for a non-pay-per-view show in the history of the company, and Jim Crockett probably hadn't done one going back to 1988.
Wow.
So the next night in Norfolk, Virginia, they did $72,133. They talked about what was on the card, but they're doing banging business on the house show circuit. Comparing that to the pay-per-view where they made they had $1.86 million. These are just 3 house shows, and you're banging out 102,000, 80,000. You do that enough nights of the year, you're going to really make up some difference and, bridge the gap and be able to afford some of these contracts.
Yeah, no, listen, it's huge for any company. We don't see even WWE at this time right nowadays is kind of steering a little bit away from those house shows. They're slowly brought them back in, but they don't do too many. And the ones they do, it's a legitimate grassroots outreach. Like if you do these house shows, they don't do them too often here in Chicago, but they go south. They'll go to Rockford. They hit up the smaller towns that you can't really do a television show at, just to give the fans something to bite on, and sell some merch and, get those smaller arenas filled. And it's not a bad business plan at all. You're just putting over talent. You're giving people, you're getting more eyes on your product,
Yeah. I mean, you have the difference in, I remember during the whole pandemic era of wrestling that they were talking about the house show circuit. They were running those at a loss. So we see WCW making money here in 1996. WWE in 2019, 2020, those house shows were at a loss. But they thought historically you make a lot of ground in those places that you don't typically do shows because you're going to build lifelong fans. That was like their mindset. But I think like a lot of things post-pandemic, people realize you don't have to do certain things. Sometimes things need to change and evolve. And I think 2020 really like expedited that whole process, and wrestling landscape has changed more than we ever will know until 10, 15 years from now, when we really take a look overhead and take a look at what changed. The lack of house shows, the dates off, and all these wrestlers taking time off for their health.
Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't the case here. Obviously, they're working all these dates, and that was the appeal for some of these stars to come over to WCW. They don't have to work as many dates. But even them working those WCW dates is exponentially more than the dates that people are working in AEW.
Yeah, it's just crazy. I mean, AEW has only ran one house show their entire run so far, and just goes to show you don't need that house show mentality. You don't need to do that. You could just keep doing what you do. I mean, you got your AEW darks, your dark elevations. Yeah, cool. Those are I guess the closest thing they have to a house show that they utilize YouTube for, and they're still getting views on it though. And that's, I mean, they're internet house shows at this point.
Yeah,
and
sure.
It's a great business plan on Tony Khan's part, and I think it just stems from the advancement of wrestling society.
Being progressive in the way you think about how to approach a business. I think the house show circuit was an antiquated way that this is how we always did it. Like, we always made these towns. We're always going to this town before Raw. I'm going to do 2 more dates after Raw, and then we're going to be there for SmackDown. But in the long run, is that what's really good for the talent and for the fans? Like, I don't know if that's the case. When you have Cena, Cena may draw a house and you're going to make a big amount of money when he's there, but is it really worth it for me, like when the house shows would come to town, and again, I live in New York, so like I would get the big events, and you're in Chicago, you would get the big events. So house shows didn't have the same appeal that they would in somewhere like where Hawk lives in Indiana. I know WrestleMania 8 came there, and that was it. The Hoosier Dome or whatever. Yeah. They don't really come there for main pay-per-views, especially in the late 90s, early 2000s. So for me, I would know nothing was changing hands. Very rarely are we having a title switch at the house shows. You may get a cool match here and there, some cool moment that you wouldn't normally see, like Taker doing the spinneroonie or being attempted to do the spinneroonie, things like that.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm glad to see them go.
And no, absolutely, man. I mean, I went to this just randomly popped up in my head, but I went to a TNA house show in 2008. AJ Styles, world champion. Scott Steiner was working there. Young Austin Creed. We're getting all these young up and comers there, but it was maybe 2,000 people in the crowd, if that. And that I almost feel like that would hurt the performers a little bit, going from doing your normal big arena show to, an indie show basically. I had front row seats and TNA gave them to me because I did street teaming for them. That's gotta be a little uncomfortable going from all these big shows doing pay-per-views and stuff, and then your AJ Styles fighting Billy Gunn in the main event at a house show type deal for that, and like in front of 1,500 fans. It's I don't know, man. It would take a blow for any performer. But the intimacy for the fan is more important, I guess, out of it. But yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, I think the mindset has switched from they want the wrestlers to get their reps, and now they're not getting their reps on the house show circuit. They're getting their reps by working these other promotions, and you're allowing this. I'm speaking for AEW. But, now we see guys that are working GCW, and they're working AAA, and they're working Create Pro. Like I saw Max Caster last weekend at Create Pro. Hook was there. He didn't have a match, but Hook was there. He got some moves in. We see those guys that are AEW guys that are not being utilized in their biggest way. But those matches have so much value that you're working. Yeah, it's probably 1,000 people, maybe a little bit less, 800 people in the building. But to work in a place where the matches mean something, you go back and you're the big star now. Yeah. It's so much more meaningful to me than a house show.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And you're not just helping yourself, you're helping different promotions across the land, countrywide. Like it's not like you're just going, even when they do like PWG or whatever it is, like there's still fans see that and they're like, wow, this is so cool. I can't wait to see what so-and-so does in AEW. It adds a little extra layer to the character, and you build up an army of fans. It's a good rabid fan base. It's totally worth it, man. It does great for business.
Yeah, when everybody eats well, everybody's eating well. That's what they say.
Yeah.
So instead of, starving everybody else to death, like WWE put a chokehold on the wrestling business for so long, let everybody eat. You're already eating well. You only can get so full. You know what I mean? Like, share the food, share the wealth.
Absolutely.
All right. So the gag order in talking about WWF got bigger over the past week as WCW hotline people were told they couldn't mention WWF or anything in or about WWF. The order came from Turner lawyers and not WCW lawyers who don't want anyone saying anything until after the merger goes through. The ban was somewhat rescinded in that they were allowed to give a straight match results of the WWF pay-per-view show. So just an interesting note here. Yeah. More pettiness between the two. But we saw a lot of cheap shots going on. And I think we're seeing, and we'll mention in the next newsletter about Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, there's a lot going on that Vince is becoming very paranoid, that he doesn't want anything mentioned or get let loose here.
Understandably so. I mean, the future of the business is literally on the line, and it gets really deep into it very soon. So if I was Vince, I would keep all my cards in my sleeve too.
Absolutely. So moving to the March 4th newsletter, we had him noting that the babyface side of the WWF leading up to WrestleMania 12 is in somewhat of a state of flux to disarray with the expecting leaving of Razor Ramon, an injury to Diesel, the arrival of Ultimate Warrior, and the emergency replacement work of Roddy Piper. So we know what eventually happens, but all those guys in the runs, none of it works out in WWF's favor. We see Razor eventually come over as Scott Hall. We see Kevin Nash come over as, Diesel as Kevin Nash. Yeah. And then Warrior doesn't last very long. We mentioned that before. Yeah. WWF is in pretty bad shape here. They do recover. We do see them get back on their feet, but this is like they're on the ropes here.
Yeah. No, this was a very, very dark time for the McMahon family, the whole WWF. I mean, they didn't really have a lot of stars to push. They did, but they weren't really utilizing it. And they didn't utilize it early enough to where it made you care about stunning Steve Austin or Triple H at the time, or Rocky Maivia. Like everybody was just kind of growing into those roles as opposed to where they could have been a couple months ahead of time, and it's a shame because, I mean, as we see, the talent pool was rich with legendary figures that were just waiting for their moment, and they really had to fight for it at this time. It wasn't just something where they're like, "Oh, we need you to do this. Can you do something? Can you make can you make shit turn into gold? Like, help us out here." And
right,
yeah. So when they got into this spot, where their top talents are leaving and things are just happening, it's a hard watch, man. It wasn't fun to watch WWF struggle like they did.
Yeah, especially as I was a lifelong WWF fan. I wasn't watching full time yet, but I'd hop right in a little bit after this, and they were just WrestleMania 14 is when they started to turn the corner when Austin won the title for the first time. But yeah, it took a bit. I mean, 2 years of just absolute, hit or miss. Even watch WrestleMania 13 and productions, like they don't know who to be yet.
Yeah.
So while nothing's official, Hall is expected to join WCW after his contract and legal commitments and or sitting out period ends with WWF in late May. In a situation spoken of with some disdain by WWF CEO Vince McMahon, Hall sent a telegram, very 1996, to McMahon on February 21st, officially giving his 90-day notice that he was leaving the company. On the same day, Hall was suspended by the WWF for 6 weeks for reasons theoretically having nothing to do with him giving his notice, causing him to miss his scheduled appearances this past weekend. The suspension would take him a few days past WrestleMania, which Hall was no doubt counting on his last big payday before leaving. With him gone, the WWF will set up a gimmick match with Goldust against Roddy Piper for the vacant slot since they began work in that direction on February 26th Raw show, with Goldust doing a sexually suggestive phone call about Piper and wanted to play his bagpipes. While Hall would be eligible to return on April 3rd and work out remainder of his notice, the general belief is that he'll be sitting out from now until he can join WCW. So he'll go into the history of who he was. We do know he was there prior. I honestly can't say I knew that street fight match wasn't always the intention. It was supposed to be Hall versus Goldust. Did you know that?
No, I did not. And this is news to me. And just a quick run back for you kids that don't know what a telegraph is. That's a text message. It was an expensive text message. You had to pay somebody to go deliver a message to somebody, a carrier, just like we have cell phone carriers. That's where the terminology comes from.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, it's wild and almost a blessing in disguise though, because that Piper and Goldust match was amazing.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things at the time that was produced in WWF.
Yeah.
Especially as I got older, I go back and watch that. It's one of my favorite things that Goldust did in WWF. And he had a great run there, you know. Crazy to think. I had no clue that Scott Hall was on his way out at this time. I was a little kid. I'm just like, oh, I loved Razor Ramon. You know, he was one of my favorite gimmicks in the business. Same thing with Diesel. Love Diesel. Like we would go to our friend's house, we'd be playing with our pillow buddies, pile driving them, be like, I'm gonna be Diesel, I'm gonna do the power bomb to everybody, power bomb you here, power bomb you there. So to hear the turmoil going on and all the madness, if you will, it's pretty crazy, man.
Yeah, so I'm looking into what the planned street fight gimmick for the match against Goldust was supposed to be. Obviously, we got the Hollywood backlot brawl between the two, but apparently with Razor and Goldust, it was supposed to be live in Miami on a downtrodden street and be beamed live via satellite on pay-per-view as part of the WrestleMania show, although it was most likely had the angle taken place that it'd be similar to Dustin Rhodes' Blacktop Bully match from a year ago and be taped several days in advance and inserted into the show. So would have looked completely different. I mean, WrestleMania took place in LA that year. Correct? Or no, Anaheim. That's where it was that year.
Yeah.
So live via satellite with Miami would have more of an aesthetic. It would have been completely different. And I'm not saying it would change the wrestling world altogether, but WrestleMania 12 would have looked completely different without that Goldust and Roddy Piper match.
100%. You would have had that Miami, that pop, you know, the neon lights, the Miami Vice kind of, you know, Razor Ramon rocking a white suit type deal. And you want to talk about doing things way ahead of their time. I mean, these are your first cinematic matches.
True.
You know, this is your first Boneyard Brawl or whatever the hell they called it, or your first Ultimate Deletion.
Yeah.
You know, you're kind of just getting your feet wet into that. It's crazy.
So as we know, Razor or Scott wouldn't be coming alone. Diesel, the other half of the twosome wildly rumored all week to be WCW bound, also missed the weekend shows with a degree of controversy somewhat attached. Diesel suffered a combination of a separated and fractured shoulder, apparently earlier in the In Your House cage match against Bret Hart. So they talk about the injury, but most notably, he talks about how guaranteed money may draw him to come over to WCW with his friend. So writing seems to be on the wall in the newsletter and also in the backstage area of WWF. I think they know these guys are leaving and they're trying their best to figure out a way to not only figure out who's taking their spot and how do you do damage control for the rest of your locker room, really.
Yeah. No, and it's like if you go back and watch some of the shoot interviews with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, they were begging Vince to match the deal and they would stay. You know, they didn't want to leave. They wanted the money because, as Kevin Nash loves to say, nothing matters more than the money and the miles. So it's crazy, man.
So more stuff about Warrior and him coming back. They had talked about that he would be wrestling Triple H as a punishment. So it was interesting to see that in there. All good. The other thing is we have more of the Huckster Nacho Man billionaire Ted skit things going on. Now they're going to be on the pregame of WrestleMania, which again is sort of ahead of its time.
Yeah.
And then finally in the newsletter, we had Bret Hart, something about Bret Hart and the Calgary Sun. So just a little bit talking about potentially him going to wrestle in WCW, which was just fascinating to me that at the time it seemed like it was impossible because Bret Hart was the guy there. Him and Shawn were the guys. There have been definitely discussion through an intermediary regarding Bret Hart going to WCW, including being offered the main event at Starrcade against Ric Flair, although the odds appear to be against that happening in a big way. So we see that about a year later.
Yeah.
More than a year later. But just fascinating to see that the newsletter, the pulse, the finger was on the pulse. And I know WCW was poaching all the talent, but just, I mean, very appropriate to look back at today, wasn't it?
Yeah, and listen, the feelers were there. And again, as a kid, I had no clue, but eventually we see that very, very infamous CW by Bret Hart, and all the screw job, all that stuff, and maybe this is going this far back, man. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, so that is the newsletter, guys. I hope you enjoyed listening to us, and every week we do go through the newsletter and I comb through it to find any sort of relevant information about WCW or relevant tying to WCW from the WWF angle as well. But I think it's time to get our fix, man. You ready for that?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so for our first Nitro, we will be covering, like I mentioned before, it will be the February 19th episode of Nitro, live from Salisbury, Maryland at the Wicomico Civic Center. And as we know, our current champions are still Ric Flair as the world champion. We have Conan as our United States champion. Our world tag team champions are Sting and Lex Luger. And our WCW World Television champion is Johnny B. Bad. We have Eric Bischoff, Bobby Heenan, and Steve Mongo McMichael on the announce booth. Man, before we get into the show, this Nitro, even the way it opened too, was Mongo drunk? Like, do we want to go there? I mean, I don't want to open up a can of worms here, but
I'm not trying to slander the man. I know he's going through a rough time right now, so all the love to Mongo, but I think so.
I mean, he might have been hitting the sauce a little bit. That was, you know what, that's all good.
He definitely had his thumb up that Chihuahua's ass.
It's a full-blown puppet at this point, but
it's a nice dirty work throwback there. But yeah, man, listen, he was a little all over the place. It was noticeable. It was not noticeable.
Exactly. That's why I only mentioned. I'm not trying to disparage the guy. I felt like it had to be mentioned, because if you guys are watching with us, if we didn't mention it, you'd be like, "Did you even watch the show?"
Yeah.
So we open with Arn Anderson versus Hulk Hogan, and this is why you're here. It's in the graphic. We talked about Hulk Hogan. This was Hogan's rematch after losing to Arn last week to the high heel job that he got hit in the eye again. Pretty much, this match was essentially the same match, and I'll let you take the lead on it in a second, with Hogan destroying Double A. But give me your play-by-play and I guess what you liked about this match. We saw Arn Anderson getting the win, but tell us how he got there.
It was weird. I mean, it was a very, very one-sided battle. I mean, Hogan was dominating the whole match, right? It was just ridiculous. I didn't know what to expect, because it kind of, was just like, oh, again, we're doing this Hogan thing again. So the match goes on, and it's good. He's commanding ship. He's doing his thing. Taskmaster's out there. He's kind of distracting the ref. Macho Man comes in, and he just tried to save Hogan from what's going on. And the ref just DQs Hogan out of nowhere. So Arn has another win against Hogan, and it's a DQ win.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, Arn gets the win twice in a row, and we know Hulk Hogan's angle. I mean, you have to imagine he's trying to gain sympathy for his character. He's noticing, as is everybody watching the shows, that the red and yellow thing is sort of growing old on the audience. He's trying to be, in his best way, to be, I guess, more of a sympathetic character, which is impossible. Like, inherently, Hulk Hogan is always going to be that higher level. He's a god of wrestling at this point.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's hard to be a sympathetic character. It's just hard.
Yeah. I thought it was really weird that, not in a bad way. I'm glad Arn gets the win. It's good that Arn's getting the rub and shit like that, but just wild. It's a weird picture to be painted. And Arn getting the DQ win, the ref kind of the ref just turned around. It was like, oh, ring the bell. Like, even the announcers, they're like, Hogan got the win. Hogan, and then it was like, oh no, he didn't get the win. It was Arn Anderson the whole time. It was me, Austin. It was Arn Anderson. So it was interesting.
So with revisionist history, like, you could say Arn beat him twice, and whatever, like Jericho does. Jericho says, I beat The Rock and Austin the same night, but we know that it took how many people interfering to do it, but nobody remembers that. Now we just remember Arn Anderson won 2 weeks in a row against Hulk Hogan, and we're going to walk away with it. The other interesting thing in the middle of this match was Bischoff talking about Baywatch throughout the match and this is the first time Vader has been mentioned on TV since he went AWOL back in September. So that was something that I recognize. And he also talked about bringing in the Cruiserweight Championship.
Yeah.
So that was the first mention that I've seen of it.
Little seeds.
Planting seeds. But yeah, this match wasn't great, but it got the job done. Not a huge fan of the DQ finish. Would have loved another pin job that he could have pinned Hogan with, but I'll take Arn winning. Match went 7 minutes and 2 seconds. But as far as an opener, having Hogan open the show, whether it was his choice or not, having that big name come out to open the show, like, that's awesome. Like AEW does that a lot now too, which is it's awesome to like main event level guys in the opener. I'm here for that. Yeah,
it's cool. I feel like it draws you in if you're just especially back then. You just turn the station. We didn't have cable guides and stuff. It's rather you knew it was on or you were just flipping channels. And like, say you're coming off of like the nightly news, you switch the channel over and you see Hulk Hogan. You're like, oh, it's 7 o'clock. Let's roll. You go right into it, and you're seeing star power out there. Arn Anderson, that's the Four Horsemen guy. Hell yeah, I'm here for this. I'm down to watch. And then you kind of get stuck into it. You get sucked into the aesthetic of pro wrestling. You want to watch more. You're like, oh, what's going to happen? Well, maybe not the second match on this card, but in general.
Well, you said it, not me, but we had Loch Ness with Jimmy Hart defeating Alex Wright. So this match didn't go long at all. 2 minutes and 21 seconds. As you guys have come to know Loch Ness the last couple of weeks, he won't be here much longer, but just an absolute squash of Alex Wright. And Alex Wright is, as we talked about, sort of been a highlight a little bit. He was an unlikable character going into it, but he, work rate wise, character wise, I think he's very underrated. And to see him get squashed here was a little disheartening because I was getting behind him a little bit.
Yeah, you know what? I wrote it down. I said he had a surprising amount of offense in this match.
Yeah,
for him fighting, and then the announcers were kind of covering, like, oh, he went to go grab Loch Ness from behind, and they're like, look at the reach that Alex Wright has, because his arms were around the guy pretty well, but it was ultimately not enough for that giant Loch Ness elbow.
Man, Loch Ness is awful.
It's just a terrible gimmick. Not Jimmy Hart, not Bobby the Brain. Nobody could save this gimmick. But the good news is this is kind of the fade out for these crappy gimmicks.
Yeah,
we start getting into the better stuff in a couple weeks, couple months. So thank God.
Absolutely. So you want to take the lead on the next match? I have some things to say about Belfast Bruiser and Brad Armstrong. But
this
is my favorite match of the night. I'll be honest with you.
It absolutely was. I had a great time watching this. There's not a lot of notes on it, but Fit Finley, the Belfast Bruiser, comes out. He's rocking the long hair, the beard, almost unrecognizable. And then you get Brad Armstrong. The commentators are like, we know the Belfast Brawler's here for Steven Regal. And they're really tying that feud in, trying to build it up. And listen, Brad Armstrong looked pretty decent. Belfast Brawler, Bruiser, excuse me. He looked great. And Finley was such a stiff, awesome worker back then, and up until the time he retired. And this was just a really fun match.
100%. According to Mongo, this is a rematch from Saturday night due to the Blue Bloods ruining the match to get at Bruiser. So Bruiser, like you mentioned, the offense is brutal, man. Like, he goes out there and he doesn't lay in
he fights
soft punches at all. And I love it. Like, there's a style of wrestling that for me, like, I don't know if it fits on this show. I don't know if Bruiser fits on this show as far as aesthetically. Like, when you watch a guy like Hogan or Loch Ness go out there and they're throwing the softest punches you ever seen in your life. But Belfast Bruiser and Brad Armstrong went out there and, man, amazing match to me. And I think, honestly, in a different era, like even today, like Fit Finley would be such a sight to behold, like wrestling Bryan Danielson or wrestling at GCW. I think he was just in the wrong era. Like, even if he was in an era before him as well with like a Harley Race, he would have fit much better. And he was a time capsule of a time that has gone by. he was like upholding a different standard of wrestling. And I don't know if fans really respond to it. If you watch, the crowd doesn't really respond to the matches, and he doesn't. To me, I don't know if he had the same effect he probably would have today. I think people would really. He has a cult following a bit, and people love Finley, but I don't know. To see him here, it was like so out of place in my opinion.
Yeah, listen, Finley didn't get his flowers until well later in his career, especially after this. Like he in that WWE run he had, where he was lugging around Hornswoggle and all this stuff. Like as silly as it was, but he was still putting on top quality matches at that rate. And his theme music in WWE does not lie. His name is Finley, and he loves to fight, man. And you get to watch it happen here. And these older matches are almost they're awesome to watch because you know how big of a badass Finley turns out to be. And if you knew him or not, and you're just the first time you're watching him back then, you really get to see that.
Yes, there's a lot of good going back and forth here with headlocks and cradles and forearms being thrown. The ending saw a back suplex by Brad Armstrong, and then he runs into a tilt-a-whirl slam for a 3. Match won a total of 6 minutes and 47 seconds. But compare that to the opening match with ARN and Hogan. It was much more back and forth. It went a little bit less. Bruiser got booed. But I don't know, man. He shined for me. And I can't wait to see them go at it at Uncensored with Steven Regal and Belfast Bruiser.
Absolutely.
Because that is peak Regal and peak Finley going out there and beating. They're going to beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah, it's two guys from across the pond ready to throw hands, and man, they're going to throw some hands. I'm super excited for it.
So we have our main event on the hand here. WCW World Heavyweight Champion Ric Flair with Elizabeth and Woman taking on Randy Savage. So this is Savage's first shot at Flair since Liz turned on him. And now, we see her as a full-blown heel. She's changed her whole aesthetic. She's no longer wearing the dresses. She's wearing something a little more revealing, which is a little
cocktail
jarring.
Waitress gimmick. Yeah. She's kind of rocking,
So Savage is much more calm to start the match. I think he's reached a level of acceptance. Usually he would be going bonkers over Flair, but I think maybe at this point it's just character-wise, he's just like done with the whole Liz thing because it's happened before and it'll happen again. Now his focus is on the title. I thought Randy did a really good job of selling that aesthetic.
Yeah, I loved Flair coming out, styling and profiling like he always does. And my favorite part before the bell ring was the ref holds up the belt. It's got Macho Man's name on the plate still. And whether it be a mistake or not, the commentary team sold it. Like, look at him rubbing it in Macho Man's face. He still left the tag on it, and it was awesome. Like, I was like, damn. I was like, that was really cool catch, whether it was a flub or not. And they did a great job. And we got a throwback Flair holding both the ladies, singing, I've got the whole world in my hands. Listen, it's so crazy how this kind of flows into our generation now. You got the Fiend, you got Flair kind of doing that gimmick with the ladies. It was cool. Very great back and forth. Like, this was a hell of a main event for Nitro. I really, really had a great time watching it. It was crazy. You get Arn coming, doing the run-in, tries to screw over Macho Man. And then we get Big Booty Man coming out, which I wrote Beefcake at first. I didn't know they were killing the gimmick, but there we go. But he comes out, chases Taskmaster. We got Flair, Anderson, Savage, Hogan. They're just getting in there. And the show, again, excuse me for a second, ends at the commentary table with chaos going on, which I kind of love. I'm loving it now. Now it's getting better and better. Gene comes out. He's like, what's going on here? And Hogan's like, brother, I'm challenging you. I got my dude, Big Booty Man. I got Macho Man Randy Savage. We want to take on the Taskmaster, brother, and Flair and Arn Anderson. Let's do it next week, Nitro. Oh, yeah, brother. And it was great. It really was. It was a fun way to kill off the show and everything going on. I love the chaos breaking out. They're like, I'm Eric Bischoff, and I'm here wherever Bobby the Brain Heenan disappeared to. It's just fun, man. It's good stuff.
We gotta go.
Yeah.
So You mentioned the ending there, and the only thing I want to mention is woman throwing in the high heel shoe again. It was intercepted by Savage and nails Flair with it. He almost got him, almost ended with it. A near fall. It was a really good near fall. And then we saw it break down. Sullivan coming out, woman breaking up the pin with the other shoe. Ref is seeing none of this, obviously. Hogan runs down and starts beating up Sullivan while Arn runs in and DDT Savage. And then, as you mentioned, Flair gets the cover. Booty Man debuts. The crowd is dumbfounded while the announcers play stupid, like he's someone brand new. Like we just saw him as the Zodiac last week.
Yeah, and more so rocking the disciple look than I recall. I was like, holy shit! Now it all clicked. I was like, he really was the disciple. Like it was mind blowing to me.
Yeah. So the Booty Man, I don't know if he's ever had a figure like to tie this in with Fig Night. Has he ever had a figure? I don't think so, right?
I don't think there's a big Booty Man.
There's a Zodiac figure. There's a disciple figure.
I mean, Zodiac figure took a long time. Is there a disciple figure? I don't think there's a disciple figure.
Maybe there's not, actually. I thought I could have sworn
we need a disciple figure. Just throwing that out there. We definitely need a disciple figure.
Maybe Major Pod can release it. I know it's a WWF line, but maybe I don't know. They have FE, though. So
listen, man, Chella Toys is making a Macho Man, what's it called? A little retro. So we're getting a lot of cool shit coming out figure wise, but I do think we need to fill out that large NWO roster eventually.
Yeah,
give me the Horace Hogans. Give me everybody, man. I'm here for it. Give me Virgil with the NWO gimmick. I love it.
Eric Bischoff, you won. We're talking about Booty Man figures, so I guess you won at the end of the day.
Listen, man, he looked toyetic. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah,
toyetic as hell. Yeah, well, I think it's time to move over to the February 26th Nitro, which continues our story. So we'll give our final thoughts about the first Nitro and give our, obviously our favorite, everything that happened there, our favorite match, and we'll kind of close it up with the chaser and closing the tab. But next week on Nitro, we have, as we mentioned, February 26th from Knoxville, Tennessee at the Civic Center. Champions are all the same. Nothing changed hands. So obviously we see house shows get rid of championship reigns, like Johnny B. Bad. Still champion right now. We're going to see him lose the title soon because of his contract dispute. He'll pop up in the newsletter soon. But yeah, so all the champions are the same. We have Eric Bischoff, Bobby Heenan, and Steve Mongo. Mongo seemed like he was on par this week. I think he was okay. Yeah.
And listen, is this the first time Bischoff reads off the results for Monday Night Raw? Or has this happened before? I might have missed it in the earlier ones.
I think he did. I think he did it early January.
Okay.
But this one, he completely does it right from the open. He just goes
is Big Bubba's walking down to the ring, and he's just like, this Yokozuna DQ finish. He's like, let's move on to the real action, guys. And very snarky attitude with it too. This was more of the that'll put butts in seats kind of mentality. It wasn't so vicious before as I remember. That's why it stuck out to me. I was like, damn.
The World Whining Federation's programming.
Yeah, listen, it was crazy. I thought this was a really great match. Big Bubba looked fantastic, as we know, big boss man. Working on that farmer gimmick a little bit.
When Big Bubba's on or Boss Man's on, the guy can work, man. For a big dude, he can move around, and Sting's a great partner to have in the ring as well. So
yeah,
I love this match too. I thought it was a great opener, and I love seeing Big Bubba here. It's the first time I've seen him in WCW doing his thing aside from different spots. But
yeah,
this was a nice insight into the Big Boss Man character that would be like later on the corporation Boss Man.
Yeah, and Sting hit such a hell of a reverse tombstone on him. I thought that was going to end the match. I was like, wow. Like I literally caught me off guard. I was like, holy shit. Like Sting just did that, man. It looked fantastic.
Yep.
But then he wins with a crossbody off the top.
So Bubba avalanche Sting and takes him to the Florida Brawl, where there's a grandma on the front row. This is what I wrote. Like seen her walking around. She was almost jumping the rail to get at Bubba. Like she was angry. They picked the wrong woman to do that in front of. That was awesome because like a lot of the old WCW fans, like there was a lot of older people in the crowd, and I think that was like some of the I guess the crowd that was drawn to the Southern type of wrestling. She wanted to kill Bubba. It was
great.
The other thing, like you mentioned before, it ended with a body press for a 3 count, probably like an anticlimactic ending, 7 minutes and 14 seconds. this match was really, really good. And like we said, I think Boss Man, Big Bubba, Ray Traylor doesn't get the well-deserved credit he does as working as one of the better big mans. He had a really good run.
Yeah, I mean, listen, even when he was the big boss man and the late run, I mean, it took a lot of shit to go through to get hung from the Hell in the Cell. He was great at selling. He was great at working. He looked like a badass. He had the ability to be a stiff, big, bad guy. He's a great worker, man.
Yeah, he definitely transcended eras where he could work that old school WCW Georgia level wrestling, and then with WWF he worked that generation, the golden era, and feuded with Hogan and did that whole thing with the Twin Towers and all that, and then lost a lot of weight during the Attitude Era and went out there as wearing the original Shield garb too, like he wore the original Shield stuff.
A trendsetter and first main event of WCW Nitro.
True.
Big Bubba Rogers versus Lex Luger. Crazy times, man. So he was a part of a lot of history and kind of maybe gets forgotten about.
Yeah, gone too soon. Like many guys in wrestling, gone too soon. I think he'd be contributing in some way, and maybe not actively, but he is a great mind of wrestling and how to put matches together. Obviously, we watched him do it time and time again. I think he'd be a good ear to bend as far as getting advice. So gone too soon. Yeah. We had Gene Okerlund in the back with the WCW World Tag Team Champions Sting and Lex Luger. Road Warriors interrupt and challenge for Chicago Street Fight at Uncensored, which takes place in Tupelo, Mississippi. So
it's okay.
The Road Warriors looked epic here. Their paint was on fire.
Rocking the red for the first time.
Yeah.
We're getting to see that. Loved them looking at Lex Luger go, "You're not from Chicago." Like, it's just calling him out on his bullshit. And Luger's like, "I'm from Chicago." He's like, "The only time you've been downtown is when you go do your laundry."
That's so good.
It was perfect, man. And then he's like, "Oh, we're challenging you to a Chicago street fight." Lex is all jacked up. Sting looks dismayed. He's like, "What the hell are you doing, man?" And then he looks at Mean Gene. He's like, "I don't know what's a Chicago street fight." I mean, like, it totally just blows the whole fucking thing off the wall. This was an awesome segment. Probably one of my favorite things I've seen Lex Luger do in his career.
Sting and Luger have a really good chemistry that can't be discounted. They feed off each other really well. And again, I guess the common denominator is Sting here, but Sting and Luger really have this, love-hate relationship where they're like the odd couple. They shouldn't fit together, but they do. But I love this segment too. And the Road Warriors seem a little bit lost in the sauce here, a little bit like in WCW, but I'm looking forward to this match at Uncensored. I think it's going to be awesome.
Oh, me too, man. It's building up well. And like I said, them calling out Lex Luger on his Chicago bullshit was great. And the commentary team was selling it well. Everybody was just, it was perfect.
So the next match we have is Lex Luger defeating the Renegade. And as we know, we mentioned in the Observer that the Renegade is a complete Ultimate Warrior ripoff. And watching it back, he really is, man. Like
my goodness. Yeah.
The whole thing is Ultimate Warrior. He just minus the face paint, but everything about it is Ultimate Warrior between the no selling and the all that. But luckily, we don't have Renegade running over Luger. He wins with the torture rack. Meltzer had noted that Renegade seems to be improving a bit from week to week. I didn't see it. I mean, I also don't watch enough of him. But yeah, this match was like just there for me. But it was very obvious what a ripoff Renegade was of the Warrior. It's so obvious.
He was a good mix of like a Von Erich and the Ultimate Warrior. Like he had a great body. Obviously, if he would have worked a little bit better, I think it would have been not so shitty of a character. But like we see him at the top rope. Jimmy Hart comes out, the mouth of the South, daddy. He pushes him off the top rope. Luger puts him in the worst torture rack I think I've ever seen. His hand was up on this side like this, and he's got his head over here, and he's like waving and stuff. But then Sting comes out and just starts lighting up Luger, which you're kind of feeling that feud building a little bit more, that fire going, the aches between the two. And Sting's, I mean, in his face, got him up against the ropes, just screaming at him. "What the hell are you doing?" It's good to see Sting get fired up, man, heated, because his promos were always the best. He wasn't always like the really emotional guy. So seeing him get some fire under his breath, it really kind of showed you Sting's depth. And it wasn't just like, hey, I'm Sting, I'm fighting Harlem Heat, fuck these guys. It was really deep shit. So I thought the aftermath was better than the match itself. So I do take that away. It was good.
Yeah, we're building towards a Sting and Luger split, I'm assuming, if I know wrestling well enough. But at the same time, like you said, they're really letting the story breathe. Like, if I felt like this was going to happen immediately, but the titles just remain on them. Like, they continue to hold the championship. We'll see what happens at Uncensored. But because I really don't know, guys, as a shoot, I didn't read ahead, or I'm not watching it. I'm doing this live. So there's some things I'm going to remember who's champion, who's not. But as far as like the minutia of like specific match results, I have no idea. But
I love it.
I love it too. So we have the Road Warriors defeating Harlem Heat. This is what they should have done at Super Bowl, in my opinion, instead of having the champs wrestle twice. That was my initial reaction of like, this should have just been what they did instead of having double duty. I thought this match was really good, and I love Harlem Heat. And the biggest thing I pulled away from this, aside from the quality of the match, was how big both of these teams are.
Absolutely.
Like Stevie Ray and Booker T are just enormous, and then obviously Hawk and Animal are big guys too. We don't have that size in wrestling anymore. And I'm not saying, I'm not getting on here and being all Jim Cornette and calling them like small wrestlers and whatever, but their size, and I don't know if it was the way it was being filmed or they were enormous. They felt larger than life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Road Warriors look like two brick walls ready to charge into whatever the hell that they got going on. Harlem Heat, I mean, Booker T's a big guy, man. I don't know if you ever met him. He's a tall drink of water. Big, wide, broad shoulders, man.
And him and Stevie Ray wore the high-waisted tights, too, that they always made him look longer, too.
And like, listen, Stevie Ray's a big dude. When they first did the tag out, and Stevie Ray was just standing up. Who was he in the ring with? I had it written down. So Booker T tags out Stevie Ray. Stevie Ray walks. He's taller than Hawk is. Like it was noticeable too. I was like, God, it's huge, dude. But it was a fun, great tag match. A lot of good tag spots on Harlem Heat's on keeping the Road Warriors in their corner. I thought it was good. It was fundamental, good tag team action, man.
Yeah. So Stevie Ray and Animal fought to the floor while Booker set up Hawk for the Harlem Hangover, but there was no ref. He's on the floor with Stevie Ray as Booker leans over the top rope to yell at the ref. Animal comes by in the apron and kicks Booker in the head. Now the ref gets in the ring and counts to 3. 7 minutes and 54 seconds. Bischoff calls the Road Warriors the new number 1 contenders to the tag titles as if there was any doubt before. I thought this match was good. Two larger than life. I mean, and we know eventually Booker T wasn't quite who he was at this point, but he was like, I don't think his career gets the credit it deserves. And we're saying this a lot about different guys. But Harlem Heat as a team, they were in there hanging their own. They weren't starstruck by any means by the Road Warriors. They were in there, and I'm looking at both of them in the same light. And I don't know if I would have done that at the time watching live.
Oh, for sure. Harlem Heat was they had a good vibe with the Road Warriors because they both were like, we're from the streets, so it was like it was a perfect pairing. Like I couldn't put a better match together. I thought it was really good. And man, Booker T and Stevie Ray, amazing tag team. Obviously, the Road Warriors, great shit. Put them two together, you can't have a shit match.
You know what we need now that I'm thinking about it? We need a bumper. I know that Chad was giving out feelers about what we need for bumpers. We need a Michael Buffer bumper for the main event.
Let's get ready to rumble
for the main event. I think for each Nitro or for pay-per-view, we should, right before the main event, play that drop.
Yeah, I know.
You do it on the AEW wrap-up show where you have Mark Henry. It's time for the main event. Like, we should be able to have Michael Buffer.
Why not, man? Buffer might sue us. He's a little bit more petty.
All right, well then I guess we have to get Justin Roberts.
We're gonna do it.
The dapper yapper. We have to get him.
You can only get in trouble once. After that, you pull it away. We're done. Let's rock.
Don't ask permission. Ask for forgiveness. That's what
absolutely,
they say, right?
man.
All right, so we have the main event here: Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, and the debut of the Booty Man defeating Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, and Kevin Sullivan with Elizabeth and Woman at their side. So Savage is back to wearing a yellow and red Mega Power shirt, which I honestly don't know. Like, how did they get away with using Mega Powers as a term? Like, didn't Vince own that term? Like, it has to be copyright. Like, That kind of blew me away that they used the term mega powers.
You got away with a lot back then, which was a blessing and a curse, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's like the ECW thing where they were using the music.
Yeah.
And stuff, right? I get it.
Absolutely. But like, I mean, like I said, it's a blessing and a curse, because the blessing is you get the casual fan that turns the channel. They're like, holy shit, mega powers. But then you got WCW kind of leaning on that gimmick too much. So, I mean, they could have made up a whole new fucking name for him and just creatively made something up for him and not make it the mega powers, but it still worked out. It was good. This match was a clusterfuck for the most part, but a fun clusterfuck, which I love. I love a good clusterfuck. A lot of good work in here, man. ARN kept Booty Man in their corner. They were tagging out. They were beating the shit out of each other. Kimberly comes out, and they were like, look, it's Kimberly. And it looked like it was going somewhere. They never bring her up again.
Well, I think a lot of what they were doing was to highlight Booty Man as some main event level talent, because they had a good spot in the beginning of the match where he's dishing out violence, cutting and strutting and doing it was kind of like the beefcake thing, but not really.
Yeah.
But then also Bischoff on commentary was talking about how Zodiac was a spy in the Dungeon of Doom for Hulkster. It was all a plan. And then there's a lot to be unpacked there, because like, why would he allow certain things to happen if he was a spy?
Yeah.
Wouldn't Hogan have known about Liz if Zodiac was really a spy? Whatever.
Yeah.
I guess it's putting too much thought to something that they didn't really put that much thought into. They needed Booty Man in that spot. But it also has me thinking, was Johnny B. Bad going to be in this spot as well?
Yeah.
They were
Kimberly thing threw me off. And it was just like, okay. Like, what? She came out with flowers. Like, it was a weird thing, but it was enough for me to write it down. Yeah, it was good, man. I called them the Horsemen of Doom dominate the match by keeping Macho Man in their corner for most of the time. Hogan and Booty Man take over. Hogan picks up the win. Elizabeth handcuffs Hogan into the corner as he's knocked out, brother. And we see Ric Flair giving Hulk Hogan his 10 lashes with his belt.
Yep.
And Hogan also no-selling the shit out of it, like he's very, very, very good at doing. So very interesting, man.
Yeah, it honestly was a clusterfuck. I thought that was the best word for it. The ending saw leg drop to ARN by Hogan. Gets a 3 count to get his pin back on ARN, but it wasn't a singles match, so I don't really count it. 12 minutes and 5 seconds. Hogan goes over here. They're trying to showcase Booty Man as a legitimate main eventer. I just don't see it.
No.
You can't erase the stink of being Brutus the Barber Beefcake. No matter what you do, you could slap paint on it. You could change his tights. You could try to make him a woman's man and try to make women love him like Kimberly. It just has go away heat for me. But we'll be seeing Booty Man for quite some time.
You can paint rust any color you want. It's still going to be rust underneath that paint, man.
And you have to know, I mean, he's good friends with Hogan, and like you could read that throughout history. There's a reason why he's in the spot he is, and he gets chance after chance after chance.
Yeah.
But neither here nor there.
Wow.
I thought it was a very, very good episode of Nitro as well. 2 good episodes to follow each other, so that was a nice treat. Yeah. But let's get into the chaser, and we'll talk about our favorite part of the 2 nights.
Dance all night over here.
All right, so every week we will pick our favorite part of the 2 nights of Nitro or the pay-per-views, and we will just, let you guys know what we thought. You guys can let us know what you thought in the comments, and just let us know what you thought was the best if you watched along with us. I'll let you start, Mike Belcast. What's your favorite match or segment of these 2 episodes of Nitro? If you had to pick one.
Just one. Let me wrap my brain over here for a minute, because it was both of them are really good episodes. It was not too much downfall going on. It was a really good time, but I'm gonna have to go with Flair and Macho Man.
Yeah,
it was a main event pay-per-view quality match. It was fun, man. Honorable mention, obviously, Road Warriors, Harlan Heat, and the Belfast Bruiser, man. Just good standout shit. But I really enjoyed Flair and Macho Man. They had some good spots in there. A lot of good figure 4 work. Mach turned it over. Flair turned it back over. The ref's kicking Flair's hands as he grabs the ropes. It was good stuff, man. It was a really good, entertaining match.
Yeah, I would agree with you in all accounts about my runners up and what as well. I think this main event is just another case where you can talk about the chemistry that these two guys had. There's some wrestlers that just work very, very well together, and Flair and Savage were one of those guys. And
Yeah.
this was a legitimate world title match. It did have chaos and all this, shenanigans going on at the end, but at the end of the day, we got a 3 count. It wasn't a DQ. It wasn't a count out. It was a finish. Flair gets the win, retains. We get the debut of Booty Man after, but that doesn't take away from the match. I think it would be a good for any wrestling fan that's trying to get a better education of wrestling in general. Make a playlist of every Flair and Savage match and just watch them. They are any person that's training to be a wrestler, any person that just loves pro wrestling. You could learn so much from watching them. And then also to mention Belfast Bruiser and Brett Armstrong, to give them love. Great, hard-hitting match that would fit on any card today with Minoru Suzuki. Like, that's how hard-hitting Belfast Bruiser is. And Fit Finlay is kind of a hidden gem. Like, if you didn't watch him in that early, it's not Ruthless Aggression, but like 2006-ish is when that happened. I don't know what era of wrestling you would call that. But highlighted by his WrestleMania moment in Chicago. I think you were there, WrestleMania 22. Yeah. With the
awesome,
him and Flair were way too old to be in that match, but they're taking bumps off the top, and
like crazy.
They were sort of like the highlight of that Money in the Bank match. So cool to see him in like his formidable years. I mean, he was already a veteran here, but this is sort of when he made his name on a national stage.
Yeah, he was huge, and he was over, and it was cool. And like just to go back to what you were saying about Flair and Savage, I mean, there's a lot of things I'm seeing on these matches, even in the 6-man tag match. The test of strength was done so great between Booty Man and Flair. Actually, like I was like, damn, I really missed the test of strength. But I mean, you're watching Savage do, the double axe handle off the top rope. Flair hits him in the stomach. Macho Man falls right to his knees, and not like it's so effortless. And you go try to do some of that stuff, man. It ain't easy shit to pull off at any age. So it's like you're watching two masters at their craft. And again, that match, it was almost 12 minutes long on national television on Nitro. No commercials. It was great. Fantastic, man. You can't ask for better shit.
Yeah, people talk about the WrestleMania 8 match as being the be-all, end-all, and I wouldn't say this match was better than that because it was on a different stage. They gave it more time, but this was comparable. They went out there, and Savage was a different wrestler then. I mean, we see errors of Savage. We see him the WrestleMania 3 against Ricky Steamboat. We see him through WrestleMania 4 and 5 where he's the mega power and he's changing a little bit of his style. And then ultimately when he gets to WCW, he's a completely different worker. But I think the chemistry never changes. And Flair, I mean, he's appropriate today. He's going to have his last match in Nashville for StarCast weekend in July. He's like a fish in water with wrestling, man. He is just second nature. Yeah. Everything is so well done, a well-oiled machine. And then just the trust with him and Savage, like you could just tell they trust each other in there, that they're like, there's never any doubt about where the other person would be. Like when you take away from that match, it's just, they're great dance partners. They know exactly what they're going to do. They're great teammates. And
absolutely.
And if you also watch, there's never really any talking. Like Cena's infamous for having like over their head, like hip toss me. But Savage and Flair, whether it's just an old school type of thing where you don't have to speak about it, like, or it's done in Morse code and just tapping somebody.
Yeah.
They don't, I can't ever see it. Ever.
No, ever. So like, kudos to WCW's production team and kudos to the goddamn talents that Ric Flair and Macho Man are, because the believability is effortless. You watch it, you're like, wow, it's captivating. It's something that draws you in and you want to see more of it always.
Yeah, I mean, those are two great episodes of Nitro, and I hope you guys enjoyed listening to us talk about them. And it would be better enjoyed if you guys follow along with us. I understand that you guys could sit down with what kind of soda? What's a 1996 soda? Some Surge?
Some Surge. You could or Tab. You guys could have a nice cold Tab. Yeah. And just enjoy your Arch Deluxe. Yeah.
A McRib? You want a McRib?
McRib? Yeah. Send your mom a telegram. Tell her you love her. Throw on some WCW. Just enjoy it, man.
But you know what? Like, I think all joking aside, like this journey, like you almost have to be forced to do it because it's such a huge task to take on. But when you're almost forced to do it because we're doing a show on it, if you as a viewer are doing it, it's worth it, man. Once you get in the mix and you're watching week to week, you see the progression. And I think as a wrestling fan, when you do that and watching whole, like I had told you in the past, I watched WWF 1997, 2020 when we were working from home. I'd have it on. And I watched everything from WWF 1997, and my knowledge as a wrestling fan just grew because you can talk about what happened, you can read about it, but when you consume it, it's like as if it was brand new on the day, and it was wonderful. And that's what this is to me. It's so much fun.
Yeah, 100% agree. And even living through it and going back, there's a lot of shit I forgot, especially the Booty Man, just shit like that.
Stuff
Renegade.
you want to forget, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly, right. Loch Ness. But it's almost you get a moment to appreciate those weird things too, because like as much as I hate the Loch Ness character, it's fun to laugh at. It gives me something to talk about. It gives me something to remember from the episode. It's little stuff like that. Watching Alex Wright handles his own against this big dude, it was fun. You get a really good buffet of excellent stuff to watch on here, and even pick apart if you want. But if you're just on it for the ride and you're enjoying it, it's something well worth getting into.
Yeah, and I think we're giving a fair assessment of it. When it's bad, we'll call it bad. We're not just looking at through rose-colored nostalgia glasses. When it's bad, we'll talk about it.
Yeah,
but for the most part, this stuff ages really well, and
it really
that's
does.
Remarkable for how long ago it really was, and it just shows how truly game-changing and trailblazing WCW was at the time, and it's only going to get better, guys. That's the thing. It's only getting better.
And we're just climbing that slow mountain. But when we get to the top, that payoff's there. It's gonna be awesome, man. So make sure you are tuning in and checking it out and just enjoying the ride with us, because it would make your time watching this way more enjoyable if you kind of feel like what the hell's going on. It's hard to read the news and it's easier to live it. So it's a good time, man.
100%. I think it's time to close the tab because I turned the lights on at the bar, man. All right, so we're here closing the tab. This will be our final wrap-up of the show this week. Next week's show is May 27th, 2022, and we'll be talking about the Nitro from March 11th, 1996 from Salisbury, Maryland, and Nitro from March 18th, 1996 in Knoxville, Tennessee. So just keep in mind that we're slowly approaching the pay-per-view. Episode 7 will be covering WCW Uncensored 1996 and the follow-up Nitro. So
can't wait.
We're quickly approaching another pay-per-view, believe it or not. And I have this scheduled in front of me, and I don't want to overwhelm guys with dates and stuff, but we're going to be doing this for a while, and we're going to start hitting some landmark events of things that go on.
Yeah, and we're catching up to our own timeline rather quickly. It will be May in 1996 in no time, and it will be June in 2022. So we're catching up rather quickly, and soon everything's just kind of going to flow into place. It's going to be really fun. I'm excited, man. I am beyond excited. I think we're in for a hell of a ride.
Absolutely. And you guys, I know we didn't do it at the top of the hour, but I want to make sure you guys go to the turnbuckletavern.com to subscribe and like and consume everything. You see all those different channels. We're everywhere, guys. We continue to give out hours of free content. The least you can do is just buy a shirt, leave a review, 5-star if you can. We'll send you some stickers. Buy a shirt, buy a mug, anything. If you're asking about what do the shirts look like, oh, good thing you asked. We have the Anti-Taskmaster shirt on Teespring. It's not Haku, it's Ming or Go Fuck Yourself. There's other shirts on there. You just want an actual Turnbuckle Tavern hoodie, which I actually bought. It's beautiful. It's comfy. I'm rocking it. And we also have the official Pro Wrestling Tee store at the Tavern. Shot of Nostalgia and the Tavern Daddies. Go buy some merch. Support the Tavern. Support the show in any way you guys can. Mike Belcaster, I'll turn the floor over to you for a couple seconds. Tell me what's going on in your world. And tell me what's going on in the Tavern on your end.
It's going to be a great time. I mean, we're coming back Monday with our first episode of the fucking GCW show in a couple weeks, which I'm super excited for. We'll get that out of the way. And that will be the only time you see me on the Tavern next week until You know, I might pop up mysteriously here and there. I don't know. I'm not spoiling anything, but I will tell you something. I'm going to Las Vegas. I'm going to be at AEW Double or Nothing. Come find me. I'll be rocking my turnbuckle merch. I have my turnbuckle hat on. Just scream my name and I will be there. I'll be hanging out at the Nitro Grill. You can remember that? That was a blast from the past. WCW Nitro Grill, man. But no, I'll be out and about, man. I'll be hanging out at all the events. If you see me, come grab a sticker from me. I'll have some stickers on me. It'll be a fun time. Come say hi, chat it up. Yeah, I'm out there for a good time, not a long time. So,
hell yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
And just want to say safe travels to you and enjoy your time there. And I'm sure we'll keep up and send some pictures. If you guys want to see some pictures of his travels throughout, Belly to Bellcaster's travels throughout Las Vegas, join the Discord, guys. Go on there.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll post some pictures in the Tavern General chat and have a conversation with all your favorite hosts on there. Again, turnbuckletavern.com is the place to get everything you need. There's links, everything involved. Make sure you guys do that because it goes a very long way. And this community is bigger than just the shows we're doing. I mean, you can hop in the comments, you can talk to us about the shows, but if you really want insight into what we're doing, the Discord is where it's at, guys. Pop in there and you have full access to the hosts of your favorite shows. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. We guys aren't fans, you're friends. I want you to come be friendly. That's how it goes, man. We don't do this on our own merit. We do it with the love and support from you guys, and we thank you for that love and support. And we can't wait to see you guys grow in the numbers. And yeah, but we're bluegrass outreach people. We are down here with the people, Daddy. We put our hands to the screen so you can feel our power.
As Linda McMahon said, it was a grassroots movement, just like the
just like our Discord
show. Yeah, yeah. Except we're actually going to follow through on it, unlike WWF. But man, this was a blast, man. I appreciate you hopping on me. This is always my favorite hour of the week. And I know I said that about Honor Society, but this is also like right up there as well.
Yeah, listen, every moment down at the tavern keeps getting better and better. I'm enjoying all of it. You guys killed it on Honor Society, and this is just the best way to end your week and kick into the weekend with a shot of nostalgia. So thank you guys for joining.
Thank you guys for joining us. I couldn't have said it better than Belly to Bellcaster. Tip your bartenders, guys. We'll see you next week.